It's pulled back quite a bit over the past 3 months, but it's still up almost 40% over the past 3 months.
It's been a fall of volatility for quantum computing stocks, but does that pullback actually change the long-term outlook?
Currently achieving about a 99.99% accuracy rating. Their technology is doing some pretty amazing stuff. They're already, for instance, doing amazing things as far as the contracts that they have.
MarketBeat's Jeffrey Neal Johnson takes a deep dive into the technology
They're using particles of light to do the quantum computing.
and shares his list of the top 5 quantum computing stocks he's watching for long-term potential.
They just happen to have one of the top of the line quantum research divisions. It's just that nobody talks about them.
Jeffrey, so great to have you back on the show talking about a much desired topic. A lot of our viewers have been wanting to hear an update on quantum computing stocks, and we need quite an update because these stocks have had so much movement over the last couple of months, from an explosive October to a big pullback right now. Let's go over what is happening in the quantum computing sector right now.
I think that in 2025, there has been a massive shift in the quantum sector and in a lot of the other like experimental technology sectors such as AI and eVTOL and all the other cool sectors that I like to follow. And the transition in sentiment seems to be you have been telling us about this really cool science experiment that you've been doing now for 3 or 4 years. We want to know that things are moving forward. For the past 3 or 4 years, right? Quantum computing has been about who's producing the most qubits. So you have all of these companies saying, oh, we've got this many qubits and we've produced 300 qubits, 400 qubits, whatever. But that was always followed immediately with the fact that those qubits are very unstable. So they can produce 1,000 qubits, right? So it's like producing 1,000 cars, but maybe only two of them actually work when they come off the production line. And the two that actually work, they don't really work that well. So the industry has shifted to this new standard that they're using called the logical qubit. And what that is it's a stable qubit that can actually be used, that can actually function, and can actually do things. And that becomes like the new benchmark. So now these companies aren't saying that that we've produced 700 qubits. They're actually moving more towards a calculations driven metric. So more towards a mile per gallon or a flop processor metric, like in current silicone, where they measure everything by the amount of flops that they do, right? So it's creating this movement to an unregulated science project to a place where like proven advancements can happen. And then along with that, the sentiment change has come from investors because for the longest time, it's always been quantum this, quantum that. Nobody really knew what quantum was. Nobody really knew what quantum did. Nobody really knew what quantum would be used for. It was just this like magic science computer thing that was going on. But now each one of these individual companies that we talk about have advanced in their technology to the point where the technology actually has use cases. So while one company might be doing A, this company's doing B, and this company's doing C, and each one is a different problem that quantum computing can solve. So, for instance, if one on our list succeeds and the other on our list succeeds, they may not be competing against each other at the end of the day. And so now that this is an understood thing, the market's starting to open up a little bit more. It's starting to breathe a little bit more, and people are starting to look for more than one play. There's not going to be one winner.
I think that's a really important point when we talk about quantum computing stocks, even though as a sector, they tend to move together as far as their charts and their price action. And we're going to see that in all of these charts today. But I like that you broke down some of the technology behind this sector to start off with, because it shows why there's still a belief from a lot of investors, including yourself, that there could still be some future growth potential in this quantum computing sector over the next 3 to 5 years or so if this technology really does pan out. So, Jeffrey, Jeffrey, I know you have a list for us today of the top 5 quantum computing stocks that you are watching for that long term potential growth ahead. I am, of course, paying close attention to see which one of these to add to Bridget's buys. They all have something a little bit different, and their chart action and analyst forecasts are also very different. Jeffrey, let's get right into it. What's that first quantum computing stock on your list?
The first one that I have on my list is going to be IonQ. What they do is they're basically using a vacuum chamber. They put atoms in the vacuum chamber, then they use electromagnetic fields to manipulate those atoms. In typical standard computing, you have the ones and zeros of your computer chip. And it's basically replacing those transistors with individual atoms. And because atoms by nature are 100% identical, that kind of gives them like a secret sauce, basically, because of their high fidelity. Their primary thing right now is that they're building these deep calculation circuits called AQ64 or algorithmic cubic 64 circuit or whatever. But that particular circuit is currently achieving about a 99.99% accuracy rating across their qubits. Their technology is doing some pretty amazing stuff, and they're already, for instance, doing amazing things as far as the contracts that they have and that sort of thing. This particular unit, this particular system, the way it's designed, is going to be very tailored towards things like chemistry. So, developing new drugs, simulating caffeine molecules, simulating battery chemistry, and that kind of thing. And so, when you're doing chemical simulations, having a super accurate chip is like one of the biggest things that you can have out there.
Yeah, so many potential uses for quantum computing. This technology is so exciting because it could change the way that we make medicine and have scientific breakthroughs in the future. I love all of this new research happening right now because it really could change everything. This might not be quite as advanced as the research happening in quantum computing, but that new technology also applies to your own investments. I recently shared about finding the Monarch Money app, which is a high tech way of really streamlining my personal finances. It's totally secure and private, and it's access to over 13,000 institutions, so you can connect all of your accounts from your checking, your credit cards, and even your investments all in one very clean dashboard that makes it so easy to keep track of your personal finances and also helps alert you when maybe you have some monthly subscriptions creeping up and eating away at your cash flow. This is the way to use technology to really benefit you personally. It also helps you to set goals and really stay on top of them. The Monarch Money app will help me monitor my progress, sending me updates to help keep me on track, which is incredibly important for personal investors like us. If you want to try out the Monarch Money app for yourself and see if it can have an impact on your finances too, scan this QR code. It's a 50% off offer just for our viewers today. There's also a link right down in the description that you can check out too if you want to look into Monarch Money a little more. All right, Jeffrey, back to quantum computing and a little bit of follow up on IonQ. We talked a lot about what the company does, but let's talk about that chart and the price action on this one right now. What is this one then doing? And I feel like it's maybe the first of a model that we're going to see kind of repeated quite a bit over the next list of stocks as well.
The entire sector, as we've talked, has kind of been struggling. So they're down about 7 or 8% over the past 3 months, but they're actually up still about 80% on the year. And that's a good thing because it gives you a little room to enter in and start building your position. The thing about this stock is they have a $1.5 billion in cash right now. So they have a really long runway before they're going to run out of money. And then on top of it, they're currently selling time on their system to Hyundai for battery, like making batteries or simulating battery chemistry, and also to the U.S. Air Force. So they have a military contract, which is always great to have. They have a strong industry partner with Hyundai that's already buying time. They have a lot of money in the bank, and their stock is depressed enough that it could be a really good entry point for someone who's wanting to start a position in this company.
Yeah, all of those sound like really good reasons. Investors might want to dig a little deeper into this company and do their own research on IonQ. Let's get to that second name on your list, Jeffrey. This one has technology that's a little bit different.
So the next one on this list is going to be Rigetti, and the thing about Rigetti is that makes them really special is that they're using silicon-based quantum technology. So what that means is that they can actually currently print their chips using TSMC or Intel or any other silicon wafer printing technology, but the chip is printed out of superconducting metal versus silicone. The thing about that is that it allows them to use the current supply chain to make their chips. So they could go into crazy scale production tomorrow if the demand was to show up. They can just print their processors. Now, the fact that they can just print their processors makes it sound a little bit less complicated than it really is because these processors still have to be super chilled inside of, this massive shipping container size module. And so it's not a situation where chips are printable makes them a lot better because they still have the problem with the supercooling. But once supercooling technology becomes standardized, they can print these chips out really fast. And the thing is that they're using their own technology called Anka 3, which instead of buying one giant quantum chip, they're like modular Lego block style chips that can be scaled pretty much indefinitely based on the amount of quantum power that you actually need. So there are two major sells are that they can print the chips on standard technology and they're Lego block assembled so that you can have a very small, efficient supercomputer, or you can have a much bigger, much more powerful supercomputer if that's what you need.
Interesting and definitely different than the first company that you talked about. I think their chart is also a little bit different. You look at, pull this one up, you see a huge spike in October. I mean, still, the company is up over 300% for the year. So still doing very, very well, but it's pulled back almost 40% in the last 3 months.
It's pulled back quite a bit over the past 3 months, but it's still up almost 40% over the past 3 months. I think it's important to understand that if the quantum boom was to happen, like, right now, if it was a sudden thing for quantum chips to be mass produced right now, Rigetti would win this race because they can mass produce the chips so much faster. That's probably why they're still up 40, 35, 40% over the past, say, 3 months.
I think that's an important point about this stock and all the ones we're going to talk about today. Volatility is the name of the game. It's still a speculative play because these companies aren't quite there yet. There's also so much short interest. I think we need to talk about that with Rigetti too. Right now, the short percent of the float is over 13%, but that's down significantly from where it was in October. There was a lot of short interest on this stock and on all of the quantum computing stocks. So I think it's important to talk about the role that short interest can play, especially in the short term moves for these stocks. We're talking about them today as more of a long term outlook of getting into these stocks now, holding them for the next 3 to 5 years, and seeing where they could go from there. Is that right?
Yes, that's absolutely right. But with the short interest being as high as it is, and them having catalysts that are significant on the near term horizon, if let's just say you woke up tomorrow and they said, we've finished all our testing, we've done it, it's good to go. If the stock was to take off and force these bears out, it could cause some pretty interesting movements on the stock.
Let's get to that third quantum computing stock that you're looking at as a long term investment for long term growth down the road.
Okay, so D-Wave Quantum, UBTS, is the next one. They're one of my favorite stocks. They utilize quantum annealing. Okay, and if you want to imagine like a rolling country hillside with lots of peaks and valleys, quantum annealing basically just looks for the lowest point in that landscape. And that doesn't seem as like, oh, well, what's that for? Who cares? Right? It doesn't crack codes. It doesn't do anything like that. But what it can do is it can very quickly and very efficiently route a million tractor trailers around the country. It can very quickly and efficiently schedule thousands and thousands of nurses so that none of their breaks overlap. It can load and track cargo ships to make sure things go where they're supposed to go faster. It can solve massive, massive amounts of problems. The thing is that they've been around for a while now, and everybody is saying, oh, 4 to 5 years out for the quantum advantage, but it's kind of here now. Their systems are running now. They're actually the gate-based system is working. So with this company, you get the gate-based technology that will inevitably route cargo ships, route airplanes, schedule thousands and thousands of workers, find better ways to ship things, faster ways to move freight, like all that stuff. But at the same time, you're kind of getting like this quantum lottery ticket because they're working on the gate thing, but they're also working on the annealing thing. So once the annealing side of the technology becomes legitimately usable, right? You would have both sides at that point. You'd have a gate-based quantum supercomputing company as well as an annealing-based quantum supercomputing company.
So many useful applications that you mentioned too for this company, and what makes it so interesting. And it's one of those names in quantum computing that we've talked about almost every time we talk about quantum computing. This is a name that comes up because it is doing well. It sounds like you would put them as far as the race to get to the finished product. You'd put D Wave behind Rigetti. Is that right?
It's really hard to say because Rigetti is more of it's like a hardcore processing, like just crunching numbers kind of a system. So it's kind of like saying you've got 3 different roads going to 3 different places with 3 different racers on each road. Which one's going to get there first? They're all pretty close to the same in their given lane. So when you talk about IonQ being able to simulate biologics, and you talk about Rigetti crunching massive, massive data sets, and then you talk about D-Wave being able to route a million airplanes through the sky the most efficient way, they're all very close to the same place in their individual use case. And that's the most important part about this particular thing is that for so long, quantum investors saw it as a one or none kind of thing. Like who's ahead? Well, there really isn't a who's ahead. Now, when you're talking about annealing technology specifically, Rigetti, because that's what they specialize in, is definitely ahead of D-Wave in annealing technology. But when you talk about their specific lane, the gate-based technology versus the annealing technology of Rigetti, they're pretty much about the same place when it comes to commercialization.
There's so much ground to cover in all of these talks. We've got 2 more to go. So I'm just gonna run through quick for those to see just what the chart looks like for D-Wave real quick. It's very, very similar to Rigetti. We are seeing a little bit of an uptick, just in the last couple of weeks, a little bit better than what Rigetti was seeing. Short interest is about the same. Analyst forecasts and things are similar. There is still some upside, with D-Wave, and it's listed as a moderate buy, which is a little bit different from what Rigetti was. So just wanna give our viewers a look at some of those logistics too. All right, Jeffrey, let's move on to that next stock on your list.
This one is one that is so speculative, but it's also the one that if they pull it off, they could be the major player. And that is because quantum computing is using photonics versus chips or atoms. And so what they're using is they're using particles of light to do the quantum computing. And the really nice thing about particles of light, they don't need to be super chips. So this particular system will run at room temperature. And even furthermore than it running at room temperature, the secret sauce here is that it's going to be small enough to fit in a server rack. So you're not going to have a quantum computer the size of a semi truck. This is going to be like a standard size quantum computer that runs at standard temperature using standard electricity. And just like some of the other players they are massively shorted, and they are about to roll out their Neurowave technology, which basically targets the AI market and helps neural networks learn faster using like quantum computing. So now you have a situation where you have a rack mounted AI system and a rack mounted quantum system working together to increase the speed of AI and to decrease the amount of quantum errors.
Yeah, it sounds like that announcement could lead to a lot more sentiment and maybe some headlines around this company. That attention often leads to more volatility and some exaggerated moves in either direction. I know a lot of investors like to stay away from those kinds of stocks, and that makes sense. It all depends on your own personal risk factors. But other investors are simply curious what high short interest can mean for volatility and sentiment. If that's you, we do have a recent article on three other high short interest companies and the bull case scenarios if the execution goes well. You can scan the QR code or click the link in the description to read the full article and get a little more context. Jeffrey, a few more follow up questions on this one before we move to the last stock on your list. My main one is what analysts have to say about this one. There are a couple of analyst ratings out there that are quite high for this company. And looking at where the stock is trading right now, again, it's down quite a bit. It looks like there could be potential upside, but it still feels like such a gamble. Why do you think analysts are putting out such a high price target for this one?
I think that in the analyst community, there are some analysts that actually understand quantum technology and some analysts that don't. For the most part, these analysts are looking at technical valuations and not the fundamental changes in technology that are going to take place when these companies actually pull off what they're trying to pull off. I say that despite the fact that some of these analyst ratings are incredibly high, I think that they might actually be too low.
Especially if you're looking further out than the next year. I think that's a part of the thing of this conversation is the timeline for when these companies could really start to see some profits coming in. And that right now is estimated at about 3 to 5 years out. So, again, like the headline in the video suggests, this isn't looking for mass profits by the end of 2026, but looking a little bit further out than that and the potential that some of these stocks could have. This one, when I'm looking at what to add to Berta's buys, this is very intriguing. But I think the hardest part is what you said. It's that if they pull it off, and that's a big if, and it's not something I've looked into or researched myself. So I'm not sure about this one. I am thinking about it though for one to add to my Bridget's buy watch list. I'm going to get to that in just a minute, but first you have your fifth stock to share with us today. Which company is that?
We have 4 incredibly speculative plays that unless you are a high risk taker, you probably will not be involved in those stocks. But quantum, quantum, quantum is the buzzword. And so I wanted to find a way that the risk adverse investor, the person who doesn't want to invest in an all or nothing company that could go through the roof or to zero, I wanted to find a play that would be good for that investor. And what I found was good old Honeywell, which has been around forever and they make all kinds of stuff from HVAC to, it's Honeywell. They make all kinds of stuff. But the fun thing about Honeywell is that they recently bought a majority stake in a company called Quantium. And that was through a merger of Honeywell's Quantum Solutions Department, where they were studying quantum technology, and Cambridge's quantum department. They use trapped ions, very similar to IonQ, and they use their industrial control systems, et cetera, to build the super chilling system that goes with that. They currently hold a world record for quantum volume, which is an overall metric of performance. And I feel like, as a technical guy, I feel in my heart that the whole quantum thing will be fine. Everything will be fine. These companies are all going to succeed and move forward, and each individual use case will attack its individual use case problem. But let's just say it doesn't, right? Quantium is such a small part of Honeywell's balance sheet that it really wouldn't affect them that much. And so what you get is you get a quantum lottery ticket because you get a strong company with strong financials and strong fundamentals and good earnings and lots of potential everywhere but quantum. They just happen to have one of the top of the line quantum research divisions in the market. So when you're talking about Rigetti and D-Wave and all these others, Quantium is just as far along as they are. It's just that nobody talks about them because they're tucked neatly inside of Honeywell. Cool part about that is is when you get your quantum lottery ticket, you also have the potential for the spinoff because the rumors have been abound that Honeywell will spin off Quantium to a whole nother company. So now you've got a company that's strong and stable, that's already doing good for itself. It has a quantum lottery ticket that could send its earnings through the roof. And you have a quantum lottery ticket through the rumors and the fact that the company might spin this division off into a separate company, giving you a share of Honeywell and some part of the new entity.
That's a big what if scenario, definitely not guaranteed, but it's also interesting to think about as a potential. It's a good setup for a potential case study for what can happen with Honeywell. I like that you included it in this list, though, to give the investor who's interested in quantum, but not quite ready to make an all or nothing bet on the companies, like you said. So, great name to look at. Also, the chart is really interesting in Honeywell. I'm surprised there's not as much analyst coverage as I would have thought for such a big, long-standing company, but there's still quite a bit of upside on the consensus price target for Honeywell too, which is another interesting part to look at. Jeffrey, I have no idea which one I want to add for Burgett's buys. They're all interesting picks. Honeywell is an interesting way for someone who's, I think, naturally I'm maybe less risk averse. But for this watch list and for the $100 I'm going to put into it, I think I'm ready to take a little bit of a risk and go with one of the pure quantum plays. And I think, again, all of them could be good choices right now. They're all doing well. They all have strong potential. But I think the first one, IonQ, it's a first on your list for a reason. I think it's really interesting to me. I think that there's maybe a little bit more analyst coverage and more people who are maybe behind this concept taking off in the next few years. So I'm going to add that one to Bird's Buys. What do you think? Is that a good one to add to the list? It's again one of the hardest ones to pick because these are all interesting in their own right.
I really like IonQ, and I think that they are definitely a good one to pick. I think that if they can get their vacuum chamber technology and their usage of atoms as transistors under control, I think that they're going to do well. They have a really nice balance sheet safety net with $1.5 billion in cash. They can survive for a long time with $1.5 billion in cash, and they already have, this technology is going to be used to simulate chemistry technology. So they're probably closer to making money than a lot of the other plays. And I think that it's a very interesting play for you to choose that.
All right, Jeffrey, thank you so much for all the information today. If you want to check out Bridget's buys for yourself, the watch list that I have on marketbeat.com, you can scan the QR code or go to the link in the description. It's also just marketbeat.com/Bridget if you want to check out that list for yourself and see what moves some of the stocks on that list make. These are all stocks that we talk about on this YouTube channel every week. Thanks again for watching, everyone. Let me know what you're thinking about quantum computing. Are you adding more to your position or waiting to see what this sector will do in the new year? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching. As always, happy investing.